let's queer up politics. Debate heats up as lesbian Congresswoman Angie joins calls for Biden to step down. After a disastrous showing at the first presidential debate and an interview for ABC that was nearly as bad, several prominent Democrats are stepping forward with concerns about President Biden. Out Representative Angie of Minnesota has called for the current president to drop out of the race, as has openly gay Rep. Mark Takano of California, and Massachusetts lesbian Governor Maura Healey has also expressed concerns about Biden's performances. In a statement, Craig wrote, "I have great respect for President Biden's decades of service for our nation and his steadfast commitment to making our country a better place. However, given what I saw and heard from the president during last week's debate in Atlanta, coupled with the lack of a forceful response from the president himself following that debate, I do not believe that the president can effectively campaign and win against Donald Trump. This is not a decision I've come to lightly, but there is simply too much at stake to risk a second Donald Trump presidency. That's why I respectfully call on President Biden to step aside as the Democratic nominee for a second term as president and allow for a new generation of leaders to step forward." Now, as someone who's worked for the Democratic Party, and been seeing everything that's going on, I've met Representative Takano and Maura Healey several times. They are not wishy-washy, fun, loosey-goosey people. For them, they are as a Democratic establishment as you can get. And to hear them and this Congresswoman from Minnesota say these statements is a really jarring thing. It's also been very interesting to watch this all go down at the same time with this article is coming out a day after the DNC and the Biden campaign were really pushing this narrative only certain groups have been coming out against me. No one in the Congressional Black Caucus is against me. So that means they started insinuating that meant if you wanted him to step aside, you're trying to invalidate the black vote. And I'm like, yes, it is really a great idea the day before Black Women's Equal Pay Day to say if you think Biden should step aside and Kamala Harris, a black woman, be the nominee, you have a problem with people of color. I'm like, my goodness. So I see all this going on. There's such a debate going on in the party. And I don't see him having a pathway to victory, quite frankly. That can always change, but that's where I think we are currently.
But isn't there two sides to the coin of this? And that is, they could have had him or not recommended him to begin with, but now the viewpoint is if he does step down, there's no way for them to pick up speed to beat Donald Trump.
Remember, though, the party did not allow an effective primary. Florida is a great example. The Florida party did not have a Democratic primary. We could not actually vote in the state.
That's right. That's right.
And that's where this is really turning into a big crisis.
Because tradition is you don't go after the sitting president. If he says he's running, it's rare that someone contests it and gets that far with it. It's usually just the sitting president.
Is anything traditional in politics anymore?
No, right. No, but Trump is as illogical or unreasonable or confounding trying to understand what he's talking about or the direction he's heading. So if you want to compare, one who's they're only 3 years apart. And it's about what they stand for. When one stands for democracy and he's surrounded by great people, and one stands for autocracy and is surrounded by people that will fulfill his mission. And what is it? I can't remember the name right now. The 2025.
Project 2025.
Heritage that is scary.
And that's terrifying.
Yes, and if you read all 900 pages of it, it's frightening. I did not read it, but I've read enough.
Enough.
Yeah. Well, and I know that Craig, Takano, and Healey aren't the only ones speaking out about this, but I just hope that these statements don't come back and bite them in their queer asses. I mean, especially if there is a chance of the orange malignancy being reelected. I mean, that would just be if he's, because there's all this talk about when Johnson was convinced to step down, and that led to Nixon being elected.
Well, would Johnson have won? He didn't look like he had a path forward,
Right.
It's true. It is true. Right.
But
and we've
never been elected because he was in a wheelchair and he was on crutches, and they never let the world see that. So it's a whole different world with media and instant right out there in your face. There's no broadcasting later. Not that you should hide it, but
he did those fireside chats, which I will say to say something in defense of Biden, so my friends don't call and scream at me tonight. he actually did a very strong call into Morning Joe yesterday. So like, if he does a lot more of that, he might have a path. But like, it's a very tough election cycle. I saw online there was a viral video on TikTok. A young person was asked, "Gun to your head, Biden or Trump?" The young person's response was, "Pull the trigger." That's where our voters are at the moment, and I think the Democratic Party really needs to start taking that more seriously.
And they need to this weekend, I guess they're all gathering again, they have to make a decision. Because otherwise we're letting the Republicans, because they're not infighting. You know, they should be infighting. They've got good reason to be infighting. They have good reason to scream, like, I can't believe this is happening in my party, and they're staying quiet. And we're not, because that's the Democrats. You know, we speak up and speak out, and at maybe our own detriment at this point, but we have to stand behind whoever the nominee ends up being, whether it be Kamala Harris or whether it be Biden or somebody else. It's about democracy. That's really what it comes down to, and a record that he set an agenda in motion 3.5 years ago, and he's fulfilling his agenda. So I'm sure it's the same agenda going forward for the most part, and he's the same people executing it. So, you know, let's not get all hooked up on him, because even if he wasn't able to finish the second term, we still have Kamala Harris in the wings who could step in. And she's been close enough. She shares the same war chest for the campaign, you know, and she could move forward. And she's not objectionable. She's logical. And, you know, forget that she's a minority. I mean, she's a woman, which, you know, I guess, but she's capable. She ran for president. And she even, I mean, Mickey Mouse would be a better president than Trump. So you've got someone highly qualified in Kamala Harris. You can't tell me that she is worse than Trump or she's not as knowledgeable. He came in knowing nothing and left learning nothing. Yes.
Well, that's also, to not do too long on this segment, that's another thing. It's like, she's polling great. Like, she would be fine. Like, and a lot of us thought that, you know, he was going to do this transitional one term and let her run. And I'm a little confused. Like, let her do it. She'll have a fun time. And I'm not sure if there's a mechanism for anyone other than Kamala to be the nominee at this point.
But I look at, too, this is not the first time that we've had elections where the president fumbled on his first debate. You know, and I'm like, is that what we will look at? Well, I'm going to say fumble because, yeah, it was a mess on both sides.
Yes.
But who knows what the next one will be? I mean, what if he comes in strong? Is that everybody change their mind again? I mean, are we flip-flopping because we're like, oh, this was...
We have to just make a decision
right
at this point. And the debate's not going to change anything between the two of them because the other one doesn't debate.